the Mindset Athlete podcast, and I'm your host, James Roberts. I'm a two-time Paralympian and owner of James Robert Fitness, which is an online training, nutrition and mindset coaching business. First of all, I'd like to thank Lauren Williams for suggesting this quote to the show. An athlete is a mindset. It's how you prepare, think and execute. Not because of some elite status or physical stature. Anybody can be an athlete. By Chris Harth. And each week on the Mindset Athlete, we like to bring you inspirational athletes, a message, or experts talking about human optimization to teach you how to change your perception of your mindset and become 1% better. And on today's show, I've got Jon Hill-Dunt. He is a semi-professional footballer, support worker who works with autistic adults. So welcome onto the show. And obviously people locally will know you as Dunty, so I'll call you by that because that's why I know you as.
Cheers, mate.
So thanks for my audience then, Dunty, beyond the initial introduction that I've given you, can you give them a little bit more of a nugget as what makes you you?
Quite opinionated. So if I think something needs to be said, I'll say it, whether I know it's going to get a bit of a backlash or sort of if it's in a positive or negative sign. If I've got something to say, I will say it. Some people like that side of me. I know some people don't like opinionated people, but I think that's me. And I think if you've got an opinion, then you're well within your rights to sort of pass that forward on. I'm also open-minded as well. If someone has an opinion that I don't think I agree with, I'll also listen to their point of view to see if that can change my opinion. So I think it's not like I'm one of those opinionated persons that will just sort of my opinion is the right way and that's it. I'm open for other thoughts as well to see if that can also change my opinion, because just because it's your opinion doesn't mean it's right. Also, I've played football locally for Prestatyn for 11, 12 years. I've played for the teams at Rhyl. I'm currently at Gresford at the moment. Played in Europe for Prestatyn, which was also a big point for myself and also the town, being from Rhyl, down the road from Prestatyn. For the past 7 years, I've worked with adults with autism. So from cases where people are very autistic and far along the spectrum where they're very challenging and not very socially able, to people where they lead a normal life and they just live away from home because they need that little bit more of independence and a little bit of help that they may not get off parents, which is a job I love and I'm very passionate about, with helping people.
Do you think that gives you another side to obviously, which obviously sport is quite unique in its sense of, how would I put this? If we single out football more specifically, it's quite bravado-esque. Do you think your job brings you down to earth? Yeah,
massively. My job makes me a very positive person, I think, because everyone wakes up and I'll have a bad day or they'll just not be feeling too good. But then I'll go into work and I'll see someone that's not able to leave the front door without help or being with someone, or they can't go to the shop without needing the support from someone to go and buy a sandwich or things like that. And I was looking at it and I was like, well, my life's not like, I could have all the problems going on, but like at the end of the day, I'm healthy and I've got my own independence. But I see people every day who don't have that independence and they can't just go out and do things what they want to do. And it automatically brings you straight down to earth and thinks life isn't that bad. And I think at the same time, I think then it annoys me a little bit more when I see other people who are very negative, especially on social media, and even some of my friends who are quite negative people. And they'll say, oh, my life isn't going too great. And I'm just like, well, you've got your health and that's the main thing. And I think obviously the way that mental health's going, like, it's very popular at the minute. Like more people are not popular, but more people are talking about it. And it seems to be more openly spoke about, especially on television and between friends on social media. And I just think if you've got a negative mindset, you're already halfway into getting into a hole. I think if you're a positive person, you're halfway out of that hole and you only need a little bit of a help to get out of it to become sort of a lot more positive in your life. And I think this, especially with my job, I don't know if I'm repeating myself here, but I think obviously when you're seeing people who have just day-to-day struggles that you do that have, and like not everyone struggles with autism, there are people who can be autistic and you won't even know. And then obviously there are other people which it's clear that they're autistic, but seeing people every day who have struggles, even if it's just getting out of bed, getting into the shower, putting a sock on. Like, you got to take yourself grateful the fact that I don't have those struggles, and it makes me a very positive person.
So on that note then, Dante, and obviously I'll go back to, last season, be it, and you know what I'm going to talk about now, because obviously we raised it behind the scenes on social media after the game. Why do you think football in general then is so kind of negative in its thinking? And I'm talking about from a supporter's perspective, be it, and the game, obviously you were playing for Rhyl last season. Why do people obviously forget? Obviously, you played for Prestatyn for a number of years.
Yeah.
Why do you think people get to that extent of abuse to another individual?
I think people are fickle. People are fickle every day in life, but I think more so in sport. So you could win 10 games in a row and everyone loves you. You can make one mistake to lose that 11th game, and all of a sudden you're not liked, or people are saying, "Oh, you were poor today," but you could have been the best player for the past 10 games. People in sport have short memories. So when you're in the bubble of a football club and you're playing every week, or within that club, and you're on the side that those fans see you every week, and you're fighting for the same cause, they love you. At the moment you leave and maybe go to a direct rival, which in that case I did. I left. But I didn't leave directly to Rhyl. A few years later, I ended up playing at Rhyl. And those fans, and to be fair, there was a few fans that gave me abuse that day, but at the same time, the fans that I noticed that were giving me abuse weren't the ones that were there supporting when I was there. I think you get a bandwagon following, especially with local rivalries and derbies, because people see it as a day out, day on the beer, and people get excited after a beer, don't they, and say things they wouldn't normally say. And that's another thing that, I think, just because people think they can say things to you, just because they've paid an entry fee, or on Twitter people can type things to you, and then when you call them out on it, they think you've had a bite, or they say, "Oh, you shouldn't be talking to people like that." Well, I don't agree with that. I think if you're willing to say things to people, you've got to be willing for them to say things back to you. And I think you see at all levels, even the racism that's going on within football now. I think obviously you see that people that are racist on Twitter and in grounds. I'm going off on a tangent here. I don't necessarily think they're racist. I think they're just doing it for a reaction, because pure racism is hatred. And those people who are saying these ridiculous things on Twitter and making monkey chants and stuff like that, if they were to walk past them on the street, they wouldn't do it. It's purely for a reaction. It doesn't make it any better, but they just need more education as to understanding what those actions can be affected to of that person.
Do you think the goalkeeper was more likely to get that kind of abuse because obviously they're that close?
Yeah, because you're in close proximity for 90 minutes, aren't you? And obviously at our level, as soon as the game ends, the fans change, and so you can be stood at one end, next end the fans have swapped around. Obviously you won't get that professionally because they're in the stands and in their seats, but obviously at our level there isn't the segregation.
And obviously if we go right back to the beginning, because my audience wouldn't have known you'd have started off your sporting career as a hockey player, and I mean field hockey. Why was the transition? I'm interested to know as well. Why did you transition from hockey to football?
So I played football from a young age, from the age of 7 or 8, and I used to play outfield. And I played outfield all the way through. And then when I was in high school, our pottery teacher was the coach of the hockey team, and this was year 8, so I would have been 12. Excuse me. And I was a bit of an idiot in the first few years in school, and in pottery, it was a great opportunity for me and my mates to mess around a little bit. And I knocked over a piece of work, and it smashed. And instead of sending me for detention, I wouldn't say I was overly popular in school, but I was in the popular crowd. The teacher said to me, "I will not send you for detention for the week if you come play for my hockey team. The school team is tonight." And I was like, "I'm not playing hockey. It doesn't interest me one bit." He was like, "Well, you're going to go to detention." Obviously, my parents had found out. So I was like, "Right, okay, I'll play hockey." I got the mick taken at me by my mates a little bit. But then there was a couple of my friends then thought, "Oh, well, if he's playing hockey, I might give it a go." Sort of things. And 3 or 4 of my friends ended up playing in the end. And ended up I was all right at it. Again, I used to play out. And then it's similar how it happened in football as well. The goalkeeper got injured. I thought it'd be a great laugh throwing all these pads, diving around, getting a rock hard ball, getting smashed at you. And I was all right with it at the end. I was quite good. ended up going to play for Rhyl Hockey Club, which was an adult. And I think that made me grow up a lot, because when you play football at that age, it's all age orientated, and you're playing in underage, under 13s, 14s, 15s, and so on. But hockey, because it's not a big sport, you can play adult hockey from the age of 12. Well, you could then, I don't know if you can now. So I was 12, 13 years of age, mixing with fully grown men. And also one of them was the head teacher at the high school. So, who I didn't really get on with before I played hockey, but obviously he saw me out of school and realised I wasn't an idiot. It was just me playing up to my friends when I was younger. And then also I got a bit more slack and leeway from him in school, because then he'd be like, I know you're not like this. So I benefited a lot playing hockey. It made me more comfortable around adults in a social, away from your parents sort of thing, where you haven't got that protection. Also made me grow up a little bit, because obviously you can imagine the banter that was flying around in the changing room. It happens in all sports, but being a 12, 13-year-old with men, you kind of have to try and hold your own a little bit. And I was playing football and hockey on either side. I'd play football in the morning for my youth team, and then I'd also go and play hockey in the afternoon until I was about 15, 16. And then obviously I couldn't really see a future in hockey, because at the time Rhyl Hockey Club weren't great. And as obviously I grew up wanting to play football, so I pursued football.
And then the rest is history then.
Yeah, the rest is history. Signed for Prestatyn when I was 17, and then stayed till I was just 29, I think I left.
And do you think, because most people watching on the video can't see you, and I've known you for probably like 8-9 years now, but do you think you get a raw deal because of your appearance? Yeah,
because I'm a bit bigger than what you'd expect for a goalkeeper, and I even still get that now. Even I played Saturday, and some random bloke came up to me in the pub and say, "Oh, geez, look at the size. I wouldn't think you'd be a goalkeeper." But again, that, like, what makes you think you can walk up to someone and say that? Do you know what I mean? I wouldn't. Like, for instance, if you saw someone with bad teeth, you wouldn't walk up to them and say, "Geez, I wouldn't think you'd be a dentist with your teeth." You just wouldn't say it. Do you know what I mean? I don't know what passes, but in football and sport, it seems acceptable to walk up to people and judge people on their appearance, and then try and make. I mean, I've had it since I was young, so it's not new to me. That's water off ducks back. If anything, I'll come back with I've already got sort of 5 or 6 pre-made replies ready, because I get it some place to go. So, but yeah, I get judged quite a bit on my appearance, I think, and then people look at me and go, "Oh, geez, he's going to be no good." And then I'm still quite quick for my size, and I've got really good reflexes, and I'll make a save, and I'm like, "Oh, geez, wouldn't have expected him to get down to that." But luckily, gravity helps me with that, so I do get down quite quick.
Do you think obviously going back to the early days of hockey had helped to somewhat with your agility then?
Yeah, definitely. Because I didn't play in goal football till I was 15. I only went goal in football because our youth team goalkeeper got injured. And I thought it'll be a laugh, I'll go in goal. I've played hockey, so it won't be much different. And then the manager ended up turning around and said, "Oh, you can stay there now if you want, because you're not too bad." But yeah, hockey especially, because there's a lot of similar techniques, especially the way that goalkeeping is now. It's a very futsal-styled goal, and unless you're into football, people listening may not understand that, but you'll watch goalkeepers now, especially David De Gea, who will come out and he'll stand tall and he'll just close his legs to try and block it, sort of like a K block, and it's the same in hockey, and that's basically why I've learned that. So I've did that from an early age, but goalkeeper coaches would always try and coach that out of me, because it wasn't a football style of goalkeeping, and now you can see it's coming in. So I'm not saying I was ahead of the times, but back then when I was younger, it's very technique orientated, and it was like, no, this is how you dive for goal, this is how you dive to save the ball, this is how you do certain things. And I've always been quite an unorthodox goalkeeper, made saves with my feet and my legs, and that is definitely because of the hockey background.
Yeah, but you've still got a reputation, even occasionally, and Scurry will come up, you stopping a penalty in the cup final.
Oh yeah, I've got quite a good record for penalties as well. Somehow I remember a journalist asked me if there's any sort of like thought process to it. I was just like, well, no, just guess. I mean, it can only go left or right or down the middle, can't it? So it's a 1 out of 3 chance of going the right way. And,
is there any mind games in terms of between obviously the person putting it on the spot and the goalkeeper?
Usually, I'll always just try and delay it as much as possible. So I always try saying things like try and tell the ref that the ball's not on the spot, or if the ball comes near me, I'll try and kick it away a little bit, just to try and delay the penalty taker getting the ball in his hand and taking the penalty. because obviously the longer it goes on, the more eyes are on him, the more pressure gets on him.
But obviously, from that perspective, Dante, the higher you go up, there's more analysis around it.
Mm-hmm.
What do obviously semi-professionals do? Because obviously, to be able to watch what a player will do on certain penalty takes is going to be more difficult because they're not going to always show certain games, even on highlights.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, the higher up you go, you can't get up. Like even in the Cymru Premier, the top league within Wales, every game is recorded. Every game has highlights. So, as a goalkeeper, if I was still playing in that league, I would be watching all the highlights from the previous week. So if I knew that their penalty take was, I knew if he scored 3 or 4 penalties, I'd find out the games to find out which way he'd gone, or if there was any sort of pattern to where he takes penalties with certain run-ups. And it may seem minimal, but those minimal advantages can help you.
So there's a lot. So do you think with how television has evolved, has made it easier for players then, or goalkeepers more specifically?
Yeah, definitely, especially on the analysis side, and more so now because when I went to uni when I was 18, there was no sort of courses, sort of football analysis, sport analysis, and sports science, but nothing analysis. As when now you can go to university to become a sports analyst, and every football team now, even Prestatyn, have a sports analysis, and like they're not a professional team. So when you're watching a game from a different view, so if you're like as a manager or as a goalkeeper, especially any player on the pitch, you can see the game from your opinion and your position placed. And so if you're watching it from a higher vantage point, you can see a lot more different things. You can see the full shape of play. I think with any sport you play, like you say, you play basketball yourself, don't you? And if you can see the pitch as high as possible to see the patterns of play and the shape of where players are on the average positions and stuff like that, and how many sprints and how many times in possession you've done with the ball, it's become massive, hasn't it? But I think because the advantages you can gain from any statistical analysis, if you can gain an advantage from it, then every club is going to do it, aren't they?
Do you think, obviously, from that perspective, for each club that you've been at, it's been slightly different?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So when I started off at Prestatyn, it was nowhere near the club it is now. So we were 3 divisions lower. We had a 6 or 7 year where we got 2 or 3 promotions in a row. Then we ended up in the Welsh Premier League. And then 3 years later, we were in Europe. So it was sort of a really quick upturn of where we were to sort of playing parks and park football, where you sometimes wouldn't have a ref, as well to 6, 7 years later, you're playing in Europe we were in Croatia. I think we played in front of 12,000 people, which is madness.
Well, it's I think, and people are even fan perspective, because when you played that, what was it? Baltic one. I can't think which country they're from.
Latvia.
Yeah, it was.
Latvia.
I think everybody within the area lapped it up because well, what's the chances of the team getting through? Probably not very likely.
No, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I think,
especially when we lost the first leg, we went away to Latvia 2-1 down, and then we ended up winning the second game 2-1, then going through on penalties, and even that was mental. And then after it all died down, we were all sat on the coach, and we were just like, "Oh, we've got to play in Croatia next week." We're only part time. A lot of lads work, and like got to try and everyone was ringing around their bosses and texting to say, "Oh, I need next week off work."
Well, is it a you got to pinch yourself moment then, in terms of being playing as a professional outfit?
Yeah, definitely. Because the team we played in Latvia, it's kind of the team was linked to a factory, so they were the main sponsor. So all those players would have been paid through the factory and then been given minimal jobs, but they were full-time footballers. And so obviously all the factory work, it was quite a hostile atmosphere. You getting picked up from the hotel and having police escorts to the training games and and then to the games, and police escort home. And then certain people in the hotel the staff were saying, "Oh, don't go to this area of town tonight because you might get into some trouble," because the fans were in there. So it is a real eye opener to play in Prestatyn at the time. We were playing in front of maybe 250 people to a few thousand, and like really hostile.
But then what was it like to then go and then play Rhyl in Croatia?
That was brilliant, because obviously the game in Latvia was on the Thursday night. We flew home the Friday. We had a game on the Saturday because we already had friendlies planned. And then we flew out again to Croatia on the Tuesday spent a couple of days in Croatia, played the Thursday, but the whole build-up was mental.
Are the two, well, because obviously you put it in perspective for the listeners, that's also a seaside town as well. Do you think they're still quite closely linked based on, because I think after the fact they obviously wish the Prestatyn the best of luck for the season and vice versa.
Yeah. Well, when we went out there, I think they thought, without really knowing much about us, I think they thought we were a full-time team, because I think they they won the first game 5-0, so I don't really think they expect what they knew. Sorry, I don't think they knew what they were getting when they came over, because when they came over to visit here and came down to our ground, because we played the game at Rhyl, but they trained at our pitch, and because our chairman at the time and their chairman got on very well, they had a good relationship. When they came down to see our facilities, I think that's when they realised, like, geez, how have you got to this level? Look at what you've got. Because a month before we played, and they bought a player from the Italian Serie A for €2.5 million, and like their squad was worth 27 million altogether, and they're playing against us. And I don't really think they understood the level difference of what we were up against. And they were shocked when our chairman told their chairman that one of our players couldn't get the time off work to go and play in the game.
Was he gutted then?
Yeah, Jack Lewis it was. Yeah, he worked in a car factory at the time, and I remember him saying that he was really struggling to get the time off work. I mean, the club even rang his boss and wrote a letter to try and give him the time off, but they wouldn't allow it because they only had 2 people off. So it was a shame for Jack to miss out on that opportunity. But obviously, and then if someone else got the opportunity to play instead of him, so sort of one person misses out, but it's the next person up.
But what was that? Well, obviously, when you came home, what was it like? Because obviously you're already out of the Europe virtually anyway with that. With the first leg. What was it kind of like to play in front of? I think it was about 2,500, if maybe a bit more, at Rhyl.
Yeah, it was a good crowd. It's a good experience. It was just nice to see all the lads' families. At the time, the team we had, it was literally like you're just playing football with your mates, and we got ourselves into a situation where we were playing well above ourselves. Like Mike Parker, Rhys Owen, David Hayes, Ross Stevens, Tommy Holmes, Gibbo, the manager. Like, we were all really good mates at the time. Andy Parkins, I could go on with all the players, but it was such a good laugh because you're basically living like a professional footballer for 2 weeks, getting flown to Latvia, flown to Croatia, relaxing in a hotel, going swimming in the sea. It was just a mad 2 weeks, really.
But did you think after that fact that the kind of the bubble burst and it kind of, well, I can say this, but it's, whether or not anybody locally took offence, it's like, I'll take it on the chin. But do you think, obviously, the bubble burst after that, the highs of it, and then the rest of the season was a bit of a struggle? Because
the prize money for you, I don't know the exact figure, so I don't really want to say in case I'm wrong, but obviously you qualify for the first round of the European qualifiers and you get X amount of money. Let's call it 100 grand for talking's sake. I don't know if that's correct, but it'll be around that. And then that's what you get for getting into the first round. And then no one at Prestatyn really expected to get through a round. They were just accepting that was the amount of money we're going to get. And for a club like Prestatyn who'd never seen that amount of money, it's a lot of money. To then get through a round to the second round, you get another round of prize money, which effectively doubles. So let's say it's gone up to 200 grand. Again, I don't know if that's factual, but it'll be around that. I know you have to take out costs of flights and hotels and players' wages and that, but that was money that the club never had, and I just think the club got a little bit excited seeing the money that was coming in, and the wages went up a lot. So personally, mine didn't, but a lot of players were coming in, 3 or 4 players on good money over what you'd get for a full-time job with minimum wage working. I'd say players came in on quite a lot of money. And I think the club tried running before they could walk. What they should have done, and it's easy to say in hindsight, was set the foundations for the club to be self-sufficient, put a 3G pitch down and things like that. I know they looked into it, but that was the start of the downfall getting to Europe. So it's kind of like highest high has also been the start of the lowest low, because for 2 years after, the club really struggled financially and obviously on the pitch, because the year after, we should have got relegated, but we got a reprieve because the team couldn't get promoted because of their licenses. The year after, they got relegated officially. And then obviously then came all the tax trouble with the tax bill, which the fans and the club helped raise to clear that debt.
But do you think, on that note, though, Dunty, that obviously a small town or small club like Prestatyn kind of gets picked on more so because you think of the likes of Cardiff City's been in trouble with the taxman, had a bit of a reprieve. Yeah. Why do you think they go out and single? Obviously, it's a football club, and you got to make
probably.
You got to make
probably easy targets, I suppose, isn't it? Like I can imagine Cardiff have great lawyers and great accountants and things like that, so they can maybe try and work out a payment plan, or they're able to sort of fend it off a little bit to be able to pay it off in chunks. And the taxman can probably see a club like Cardiff has got the ability to bring the money in to pay the bill as well. If you look at Prestatyn, all football clubs at our level lose money. It's amazing for me to see how people who have got money put money into football clubs to pay wages to try and get themselves in, to get the club into a better position when they don't really get anything back. And it's great for those people. And you can't knock anyone who owns a football club at non-league level or semi-professional because they don't make any money from it. But I suppose the taxman looked at Prestatyn to go, well, if you owe us X amount of money, I can't see where you're going to get this money to make sure this doesn't happen again. So that's maybe why I wasn't at the club at the time, so I don't know the whole ins and outs. But I'm guessing that's it's an easy target, I'm guessing, without having to go through the courts.
And obviously, why did you leave to go to new ventures? Then is it because of
I just wasn't playing, and at the time I was 29, coming up to 30, and I was just sort of like, I've been at Prestatyn for 12, 13 years, and I was just like, I think it's the right time for me to leave. And I think I wasn't playing great at the time, and maybe I'd personally myself gone a bit stale because I got comfy just being there, signing there year after year. Oh, it's all right, I'll get in eventually. And I think the manager, Gibbo, at the time, probably got a bit sick of me. I was getting a bit sick of Gibbo. And I think it was just at the time, it was a joint decision to just try something new. At the time, two of my good friends had got the manager's job at a club called Gresford in Wrexham. And at the time, I was spending a lot of time in Wrexham because I've got friends up there and things like that. So it just made sense. So I dropped down 2 leagues to play, but it was just sort of like, I'll go there, I'll play. I'll just do it for a year, see if I enjoy it, and then I'll find something else. And in the end, I loved it and ended up staying there for 3 years until the manager then went to Denby, who followed Eddie to Denby. Stayed there for 18 months, and obviously the opportunity came for him to go to Rhyl, and that's how he ended up at Rhyl. Personally, I would have never seen myself playing for Rhyl after spending so much time at Prestatyn. But I think in football or any sport, if you say things will never happen, you'll always look stupid because things always do happen. So I don't think in any sport or even in life really you can say never, because what you think 1 month, 2-3 months down the line could be completely different, and your situation's changed. Do you know what I mean? If you've got 4 or 5 clubs after you, then obviously you've got your pick. But if you've only got 1 club after you, then that's the 1 club you've got to go to if you want to continue playing.
But on that note, though, Dante, obviously you are from Rhyl. Why did you never think you would? Because if I put it in perspective for people that aren't from North Wales, you go back probably 15, 20 years ago when you and I were kids. That was the team. Yeah. That's weird actually, because I remember I was in school and I'd say I'd go and watch Rhyl when I was younger, and I'd say, I'd love to play here one day. And then you think back now, but obviously I think just over the time and the rivalry and the games that we'd had against Rhyl, they'd always been kind of like nasty games, like you'd expect from a typical rivalry. And also Prestatyn at the time with a little underdog and Rhyl with a big giant at the time, so you kind of grew up resenting them a little bit, because a lot of local lads who were good enough to play for Rhyl were told they weren't good enough because they'd spent a lot of money to bring in players from all here or everywhere. Like myself, Michael Parker, Dave Hayes, Jack Lewis, all players who played. John Fisher-Cook, for another one, Stephen Holt. I could name all these names that local people know from football. Were all at Rhyl at one point and never got a chance or many chances in the first team. And that's purely because their attitude was local players aren't good enough. And that's why Prestatyn worked, was because Gibbo saw an opportunity to sign lads who he thought were good enough to come play for Prestatyn, to sell them the dreams. Like, well, if you come play for me for 2-3 years, and Dave Fuller previously to that, when he was the manager, I will get you into the Welsh Prem. And then it's kind of like sticking 2 fingers up to them and going, well, I am good enough. We are good enough to play in this league. And do you think that's kind of has flipped 180 degrees? Obviously, I went to the derby at Christmas, and you could kind of hear the Rhyl fans saying, "Oh, the shoe's on the other foot now," and they thought they were going to get hiding, and obviously they didn't.
Mm-hmm.
But that's probably because Prestatyn didn't turn up. But that's an argument for another day. But in terms of it's kind of gone the other way, whereas they resent Prestatyn now because for
like things come in cycles, don't they?
Well, other than football, obviously, economic reasons as well.
Yeah. Even like you look at anything like fashion, politics, sport, everything comes in cycles. Even like I'm a Manchester United fan, and I've grown up knowing Manchester United is the best team in England. Now it's Liverpool, and it hurts, but I'm at peace with it because I know it comes in cycles. Liverpool were a great team in the 70s and the 80s, so things come in cycles, don't they? Like at one point, somehow bootleg jeans were in, big flares at the bottom. Looking at them, I can't see how they were ever in fashion, but they were in fashion, and skinny leg jeans weren't. And then obviously now it comes in everything. I'm going off on a tangent here massively, but things coming on economically, like you say, financial. Rhyl aren't in a position at the minute where they have got the finances to pay players a lot of money to try and get out of the league. So Rhyl are trying to rebuild on and off the pitch, and Prestatyn have been lucky enough to have an owner come in who's willing to back Neil and the club to try and get them in the league. And I think they should win the league this year. They've got a healthy lead.
We'll see. Because
it's
never, like you know, in sport and football, it's never over to the fat ladies thing.
No. Exactly.
But obviously, my final question to you then, Dunty, then, if you had to sit down with any sports person, dead or alive, then who would that be and why?
It's a tough one, really. It depends what type of chat I want. I'll throw a couple out just a bit. If it was to one of my favourite people at the moment is Peter Crouch, purely because I love his podcast, and like listening to it, you get to see and hear his personality, and I just think he'd be brilliant to sit down with and have a pint with, just have a chat and like talk about his career. But if just to pick someone who has probably passed away, I don't know. It's quite tough because I'm still only 33, so not many of my sort of sporting heroes have been at that age where they've passed away. So I think Sir Alex Ferguson is someone that I'd love to have I've met him once. It's someone I probably would love to have a massive chat with, just to talk about football with him. But so I'm still young enough where none of my heroes have died. Touch wood.
So my final question to you then, before we wrap up the show, is if you had to summarise what we've been speaking about today for people to take away, what would that be?
I think don't let people get you down. Just because people have one opinion of you doesn't mean that makes you. And I was think, like say, people off the pitch will always try and sort of wind you up, and I think that's in any sport. People will try and get that mental edge, try and get reaction out of you, to take your mind off the game. And I see that as a positive, because I see it as like they see me as a good player and they're trying their best to try and get into my head so I don't play my usual game. And that's the way that my dad told me as a kid, because obviously my dad had come to watch and he'd hear the stuff that people would say. And it'd be quite tough for him to not say anything. And that's all he ever used to say to me. If people are trying to put you off, it's because they don't want you to play your best, and it's because they see you as a threat. And I think that's the mindset. That's one way of looking at it, to try and take the positive out of a negative.
So once again, Jonathan Dunty, thanks again for coming on the Mindset Athlete podcast.
Top man, thanks very much.
It's been my pleasure.
Cheers, pal. Thank you.
If you like this episode, please do share it with your friends, and do let John and I know what you thought of the episode by tagging me on Instagram at JamesORoberts11. And again, you can do the same on Twitter and Facebook. And if you had any additional questions, don't hesitate to shoot them over as well. And finally, don't forget to check out my free content at fitamputee.co.uk and click on the tab Resources. But not forgetting, I've also started a new Facebook group, especially for the podcast, which you can find by typing in The Mindset Athlete. And also not forgetting, and one especially for the amputees listening to this podcast, I have recently created a Facebook group called The Amputee Coach, Fitness and Nutrition for Amputees, to help you lose 10 to 30 pounds. So make sure to check out the links. They will be in the description. You can find all the show notes at mindsetgame.lipson.com under the category General. So once again, Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next week for another episode of the Mindset Athlete Podcast.